The freezing wind howls through the open rear staircase of the Boeing aircraft. Absolute darkness swallows the rugged terrain below as the plane cuts through a violent storm over Washington state. A lone man stands at the very edge of the precipice. He wears a sharp business suit utterly unsuited for the freezing rain. Strapped tightly to his waist is a heavy canvas bag holding $200,000. Below him lies nothing but a black void and a near-certain death. Professional skydivers would call this maneuver pure suicide. Jumping into a freezing storm at night without a helmet or proper visual references defies all logic. Yet this mysterious passenger does not hesitate for a single second. He takes a breath and steps off the metal stairs directly into the raging hurricane. To understand how a phantom plummeted into the night sky with a fortune, we must rewind the clock. Several hours earlier, the atmosphere at Portland International Airport is entirely different. It is the early afternoon of Thanksgiving Day. Families are traveling, and the holiday spirit fills the crowded terminals. Nothing suggests that a massive federal crisis is about to rapidly unfold. Amidst the bustling crowd of holiday travelers walks a man who demands absolutely no attention. He is in his mid-40s, with an average build and a completely forgettable face. His attire consists of a dark suit with a white shirt and a black tie secured by a distinctive clip. He wears dark sunglasses, despite the heavily overcast weather outside. The man approaches the Northwest Orient Airlines counter with a calm and measured stride. He requests a single one-way ticket to Seattle. The transaction is remarkably brief and leaves no paper trail. He pays for the short flight entirely in untraceable cash. He carries absolutely no checked baggage for the journey. His only possession is a simple dark briefcase held tightly. The ticket agent asks for a name to print on the basic boarding pass. The man replies with a simple and unremarkable alias, Dan Cooper. The agent hands over the ticket and points him toward Gate 9 for the brief afternoon flight. The man walks away without drawing a single suspicious glance from the airport security personnel or the busy passengers around him. He boards the large passenger aircraft, along with 36 other unsuspecting civilians. The Boeing aircraft is mostly empty due to the holiday timing. The man walks directly to the very back of the main cabin and takes his assigned seat. This specific aisle seat in the last row offers him a perfect tactical vantage point of the entire cabin area. He places the dark briefcase gently onto his lap and waits for the boarding process to finish. A flight attendant named Florence Shaner approaches to take pre-flight drink orders. The quiet passenger requests a bourbon and soda. He pays with cash and leaves a generous tip. Shaner simply sees a polite and ordinary business traveler heading home for the long holiday weekend. At exactly 2 p.m, the heavy aircraft lifts off from the long Portland runway. The scheduled flight time to Seattle is merely 30 minutes. None of the passengers looking out the windows realize they are already trapped in a high-stakes criminal operation. The quiet man in the back row finishes his cold bourbon and reaches into his suit pocket. He pulls out a small piece of paper and begins to write a careful message. He folds the note neatly and waits patiently for the flight attendant to walk down the aisle. When Shaner passes by his seat, he extends his hand and offers her the folded paper. She assumes it is just another male passenger attempting to flirt and ignores the message. The man leans forward slightly and changes the course of modern aviation history forever. His voice remains incredibly calm and quiet as he speaks directly to the busy attendant. He politely suggests that she really should look at the hidden note immediately. He states with chilling clarity that he possesses a live bomb. The hostage crisis has officially begun without a sound. Florence Shaner freezes in the aisle as the horrifying reality of the situation washes over her. Her hands tremble slightly as she unfolds the handwritten note. The message is completely direct and leaves absolutely no room for any misinterpretation. The passenger states he has an active bomb in his briefcase and will detonate it if necessary. He commands her to sit right beside him. Her professional training immediately kicks in amidst the suddenly surging internal panic. She forces her facial expression to remain entirely neutral to avoid alerting the surrounding passengers. She slowly sits down in the empty seat while her heart pounds relentlessly against her chest. She turns to the quiet man in the dark sunglasses and softly asks him to show her the explosive device. The man does not hesitate or show any signs of nervous aggression whatsoever. He calmly unlatches his dark briefcase and opens it just enough for the flight attendant to see inside. The terrifying contents are arranged with absolute military precision. She sees distinct red cylinders connected by thick wires to a large battery. 8 heavy sticks resembling dangerous dynamite sit quietly inside. Whether the explosive device is genuinely functional or simply a highly convincing fake is completely irrelevant right now. It looks authentic enough to bring down the entire commercial aircraft and violently kill everyone on board. Shaner looks back up at the mastermind and directly asks him what he wants. His tone remains shockingly polite and conversational as he issues his massive ransom demands. He softly requests $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. He also demands 4 civilian parachutes consisting of 2 primary rigs and 2 reserve rigs. He outlines a strict operational plan for their immediate arrival in Seattle. The plane must be fully refueled upon landing, while all civilian passengers are allowed to disembark safely. The flight crew, however, must remain captured. Shaner nods in terrified agreement and tells him she must inform the captain immediately. The hijacker permits her to leave but issues a chilling warning against causing any public panic. He insists that he does not want to hurt anybody on the crowded flight. The flight attendant walks briskly toward the forward cockpit while masking her intense fear from the completely oblivious passengers. Inside the locked cockpit, Captain William Scott listens to the terrifying report from his attendant. With over 2 decades of commercial flying experience, Scott has handled various mechanical emergencies before. However, dealing with a live bomb threat at cruising altitude is an entirely new nightmare scenario. He immediately decides to cooperate fully with the armed passenger to ensure the safety of his civilians. Captain Scott contacts Seattle Air Traffic Control to officially declare a severe hijack situation. He relays the suspect claims regarding the explosive device and lists the extensive demands for cash and parachutes. Air traffic controllers immediately patch the federal authorities into the secure radio communication line. On the ground below, absolute chaos erupts as law enforcement agencies scramble to formulate an emergency response. The senior executives at Northwest Airlines hold an urgent meeting and decide they must pay the ransom. The alternative of letting a madman detonate a bomb over a heavily populated area is completely unacceptable. The plane is ordered to circle above Seattle to burn off excess fuel and buy time. Federal agents desperately race against the clock to assemble the massive amount of cash. Up in the stormy air, the mysterious hijacker remains the calmest person involved in the entire crisis. He orders another fresh bourbon from the terrified flight attendant and pays for it with exact change. He even leaves another polite tip while patiently waiting for his stolen millions. Shaner sits quietly beside him and tries to memorize every single detail about his peculiar behavior. While the aircraft continues its holding pattern, the authorities face a monumental logistical nightmare on the ground. Gathering $200,000 in $20 bills requires exactly 10,000 individual paper notes. A local bank manager is abruptly pulled away from his family Thanksgiving dinner. He rushes to open the main bank vault to supply the massive amount of emergency federal funds. Federal agents work frantically to photograph every single serial number on the gathered $20 bills. This meticulous documentation is their only real insurance policy for the uncertain future. If the clever hijacker escapes into the wind, this marked currency will become the ultimate tracking mechanism. The heavy cash is quickly packed into a durable canvas bag for the impending, highly dangerous exchange. Sourcing the requested parachutes proves to be an equally difficult challenge for the rapidly scrambling authorities. Military equipment is officially ruled out because the hijacker specifically demanded standard civilian sport parachutes. Agents frantically contact a local skydiving school and demand the specialized gear under the authority of a federal emergency. The school rapidly provides 2 primary canopies and 2 reserve chutes without asking questions. Back in the turbulent sky, the flight attendant carefully observes the mastermind sitting calmly beside her. She notes that he is highly familiar with the local geographic terrain and the aircraft itself. He uses precise aviation terminology that reveals a surprisingly deep understanding of complex flight mechanics. He calmly smokes his cigarettes while radiating an aura of total control over the escalating situation. Exactly 3 hours after the initial takeoff, the heavy aircraft finally receives official clearance to land. The Boeing touches down at the Seattle airport and slowly taxis to a highly remote section of the tarmac. The dark location is completely isolated from the main terminal buildings and any innocent civilian crowds. The hijacker issues strict new orders to prevent any tactical police rescue operations. He demands that the massive money and the parachutes be delivered directly to the aircraft by a single employee. He explicitly warns that any sudden tricks or visible federal agents will result in immediate violent detonation. Heavily armed police snipers quietly take up hidden positions on distant rooftops surrounding the dark runway. They watch the plane intensely, but hold their fire under strict federal orders. A terrified airline employee slowly approaches the idling aircraft carrying the heavy canvas bag of cash. A second nervous worker follows closely behind with the 4 requested civilian skydiving parachutes. The flight attendant opens the heavy cabin door and pulls the requested ransom items inside the tense cabin. She brings the massive fortune and the tactical gear directly to the calm man waiting patiently. The hijacker methodically inspects the delivered items with the highly critical eye of a seasoned expert. He checks the tight bundles of cash and carefully tests the complex rigging of the provided parachutes. His extremely professional handling of the equipment confirms the worst fears of the investigative federal team. This mysterious man has definitely interacted with highly technical aerial survival gear before this night. Satisfied with the massive ransom payment, the mastermind successfully honors his end of the initial bargain. He permits all 36 civilian passengers to disembark safely from the highly targeted commercial aircraft. The confused travelers file out of the plane, falsely believing they merely experienced a routine mechanical delay. They leave behind a heavily fueled aircraft containing a live bomb and a terrified crew. The psychological dynamic shifts completely as the empty cabin doors are finally sealed shut once again. The hijacker is now completely alone with the isolated flight crew and a massive fortune in untraceable cash. He turns his dark attention toward the locked cockpit to initiate the most dangerous phase of his brilliant master plan. The true terrifying scope of his incredible aviation knowledge is revealed. The mastermind issues a new set of highly specific and incredibly dangerous flight instructions to the trapped cockpit. He demands a direct flight to Mexico City, but with severely restricted operational aeronautical parameters. The aircraft must fly with the wing flaps lowered 15 degrees and the heavy landing gear fully deployed. The cabin must remain totally unpressurized while flying at an altitude strictly under 10,000 feet. Captain Scott instantly recognizes the terrifying mechanical reality behind these extremely unusual and specific aviation demands. Flying a large commercial airliner in this specific awkward configuration creates massive drag and burns fuel at an alarming rate. The plane absolutely cannot possibly reach the Mexican border without running out of gas mid-flight. He informs the hijacker that they must stop in Nevada to refuel the thirsty engines. The criminal calmly agrees to the necessary refueling stop, but insists the pilot strictly maintain his required speed. At nearly 8 in the evening, the heavy airliner takes off again into the stormy dark night sky. The plane heads south toward Nevada, while violently fighting through severe atmospheric turbulence and freezing rain. The hijacker abruptly orders the remaining flight attendant into the forward-locked cockpit with the pilots. He commands the entire captured crew to lock the heavy secure cockpit door and strictly forbids them from exiting. The highly frightened crew members comply immediately and seal themselves safely away from the armed madman. As the thick door slowly closes, the flight attendant notices the hijacker tying the heavy bags of cash tightly around his waist. He is actively preparing for something utterly unprecedented in aviation. Unbeknownst to the confident mastermind, 2 heavily armed military fighter jets silently trail the hijacked commercial airliner. The federal authorities ordered the stealth tactical escorts in case the commercial pilots lost control of the severely compromised aircraft. The fighter pilots maintain a highly careful distance to remain totally invisible from the passenger windows. They are fully prepared to shoot down the airliner if it threatens populated areas. Inside the completely empty cabin, the mastermind perfectly executes the defining mechanical move of his brilliant tactical plan. He approaches the dark rear of the aircraft and targets a highly unique structural feature of this specific plane model. The Boeing has a special set of rear stairs that can actually be lowered safely during active flight. Very few people outside the deep aviation industry know this secret capability exists. The hijacker manually triggers the complex release mechanism, and the heavy metal stairs drop forcefully into the rushing wind. The brutal stormy weather instantly violently invades the previously quiet and warm passenger cabin. Freezing damp air and deafening engine noise rip through the dark interior as the plane cruises slowly at 10,000 feet. The man stands completely alone at the dangerous edge, staring into absolute pure blackness. He is wearing a totally simple business suit and light dress shoes while facing freezing rain and hurricane-force winds. He securely carries over 20 pounds of heavy stolen cash, strapped awkwardly to his thin torso. The extremely dark landscape below offers absolutely no visual geographic references for a safe parachute deployment. To the military, pilots trailing blindly behind the insane maneuver seems like a guaranteed death sentence. Yet the highly unknown mastermind does not let the paralyzing human fear stop his ultimate daring escape. He calmly steps off the metal staircase and plunges directly downward into the violent freezing night storm. The massive wind catches his fragile body immediately and sends him violently tumbling into the endless dark abyss. The absolute greatest vanishing act in the history of modern criminal enterprise has officially been perfectly completed. The terrified pilots in the locked forward cockpit suddenly notice a sharp upward physical shift in the tail section. This highly specific mechanical shift confirms that a massive weight has just rapidly left the rear staircase. They immediately radio the federal authorities on the ground to report the terrifying aerial development. The mysterious man, known only by a completely fake name, has successfully vanished forever into the freezing sky. The federal authorities immediately launch the most highly extensive and extremely expensive tactical manhunt in American history. They precisely map the exact flight path and mathematically calculate the estimated time of the incredible midair jump. The resulting large search zone covers 28 miles of the most rugged and entirely unforgiving terrain in Washington state. Dense pine forests and heavily raging rivers create a terrifying landscape for the massive recovery operation. Hundreds of highly trained federal agents and local civilian volunteers begin heavily combing the dark wilderness at dawn. Military helicopters loudly hover over the dense green canopy, while search dogs desperately try to track human scent. They look for the parachute or the heavy canvas bag or the violently broken body of the daring hijacker. Frustrating days slowly turn into weeks, but the highly intensive search yields absolutely nothing. Professional skydivers deeply analyze the exact atmospheric conditions of the insane jump and deliver a highly grim verdict. Surviving a blind drop into a freezing night storm with improper gear and heavy cargo is mathematically highly improbable. The man had absolutely no crash helmet and no thermal protection against the brutal freezing elements. Many investigators logically conclude that the brilliant mastermind must have died violently upon impacting the dark earth. However, a deeply nagging doubt continues to relentlessly haunt the highest levels of federal law enforcement. The clever hijacker executed every single phase of his complex plan with chilling perfection and sheer military precision. He knew exactly which commercial plane to target and understood advanced aerodynamics to slow the aircraft safely. It is incredibly difficult to believe that such a highly meticulous planner would simply randomly commit frozen suicide. The national media quickly latches onto the incredible compelling story of the polite gentleman who robbed a plane and vanished. A minor hasty reporting error completely transforms his provided alias into a catchy new nickname that spreads globally. The Phantom Hijacker rapidly becomes universally known to the highly fascinated public as D.B. Cooper. He instantly transforms into a legendary cultural anti-hero who successfully defeated the unbeatable massive federal system. 9 incredibly deeply frustrating years pass slowly without a single microscopic piece of physical evidence surfacing anywhere. The massive official case files gather thick dust as the elusive ghost fades deeper into modern American mythology. Then a young boy digging happily on a remote sandy riverbank suddenly shatters the incredibly long official silence. His plastic toy shovel strikes something solid deeply buried beneath the wet sand of the cold Columbia River. The surprised boy pulls up several highly degraded bundles of rubber-banded $20 bills covered in mud. Federal agents violently rush to the rural scene and immediately thoroughly test the visible serial numbers against their master list. The numbers perfectly match the exact ransom money securely given to the skydiving Phantom almost a decade earlier. This highly shocking discovery instantly aggressively reignites the massive investigation and sparks countless new geographic theories. The highly specific location of the buried cache makes absolutely no logical geographical sense to the investigative experts. The sandy riverbank is located more than 30 miles away from the originally mathematically calculated aerial drop zone. Did the criminal survive the brutal dark landing and intentionally quietly bury a small portion of his massive fortune here? Or did his lifeless, broken body simply wash far downstream until the heavy cache sank into the mud? Despite massive, highly renewed excavation efforts, authorities find absolutely no other hidden traces of the totally missing hijacker. The vast majority of the enormous federal ransom completely hopelessly vanishes from the physical face of the earth. Law enforcement eventually highly officially suspends the active physical manhunt, but the dark, compelling mystery stubbornly refuses to die. The truly incredible legend of the vanishing man remains entirely, utterly unsolved to this very day. Perhaps his hidden bones lie deeply, permanently buried beneath the thick roots of a towering pine tree in the dark wilderness. Perhaps he successfully, bravely walked out of that freezing storm and lived a quiet, comfortable life funded by stolen millions. He successfully achieved the ultimate fantastic dream of every criminal mastermind by committing the totally perfect, flawless crime. He bravely stepped into the dark, cold void and permanently, beautifully became an immortal ghost story.